I'm telling you what I know. Worthiness healing is manifestation work. Every single day of the week, like getting to the place where you deal with whatever it is in you that's making you feel like you don't deserve XYZ, that's the work. It's not like a whole bunch of action items like step 1, step 2, step 3, even though those things will come, right? Like in my worthiness work, some of my rituals, right? Like I have an altar in my home. I bring and I put fresh flowers on this altar, a couple times a week. And then I realized that really I wasn't bringing these flowers for some deity. I was bringing these flowers because I deserve flowers. Even when I'm praying then in my altar space, it'll be like, okay, you don't need to do anything. Just be still. I'm currently manifesting bags. You don't need to do anything about that. You just need to be still. But I've gotten so much of the unworthiness junk out of the way that I'm able to hear spirit, or I'm able to, hear myself think about like, okay, what's next for me? What move should I make now, instead of making a whole bunch of moves out of desperation or insecurities.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Inside Out Podcast. I'm your host, Yhá Mourhia. The intention of this podcast is for you to enrich your life with behind-the-scenes interviews from entrepreneurs and thought leaders who are ready to keep it real about their journey thus far and what making an impact looks like to them from the inside out. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Inside Out Podcast. I'm your host, Yhá Mourhia. We have with us today EbonyJanice Moore. Hi, EbonyJanice.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you. If y'all don't know who she is, I'm going to let you know right now. EbonyJanice Moore is a womanist scholar, author, and activist doing community organizing work, most specifically around Black women's body ownership as a justice issue, Black women's access to ease, joy, and play, and hip-hop as a tool for socio-political and spiritual religious movement making. She has a BA in cultural anthropology and political science and a Master of Arts in social change with a concentration in spiritual leadership, womanist theology, and racial justice. She is the founder of Black Girl Mixtape, a multi-platform safe think space centering the intellectual authority of Black women in the form of a lecture series, a podcast, and an online learning institute led by Black women scholars. She is currently a professor of dialogue, mindfulness, and women and gender studies. Excellent. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. I really, really am. Okay, so what's up? Where is your head at today? Where are you? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good today. I do morning pages. I don't know if you've ever read The Artist's Way by Julia
Actually,
Cameron.
I had that in grad school, and I don't know if we just did excerpts of it or not, but I feel like I
Okay.
know more about it than I don't own it. So this is a reminder to me to get it.
Yes. I recommend it. I had excerpts of it prior to this as well, just from a coach. And then was finally like, I've been hearing about The Artist's Way for years. Why don't I actually read the book? And it has been like in the weeks when I'm not in therapy, The Artist's Way little exercises be therapy. Like I was doing an exercise the other day and I was like, ooh, this got me mad at somebody right now. Like,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's been profound. So I do morning pages, which it comes from The Artist's Way. And in my morning pages, I was just thinking about how do I want to feel today? And I decided that I wanted to feel really soft and rested. So I took everything that's on my agenda for this week and just kind of anything that could be moved it over into like tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, because I just woke up feeling like I just want to chill. I just don't want to really do anything. So I taught one of my classes at 11 and then decided to take a nap. And then here I
am. Have you, what is it called? Rising Woman. Do you follow that page on Instagram? She has a course called Becoming the One. And I'm doing that in complement, like as aligned with like my therapy on the side as well. So I'm just like again, my off days or off weeks, how can I continue that process of healing? And really it's all about healing your inner child. It's shadow work. So yeah. So I can add The Artist's Way to this because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I feel like that's the space that so many of us are in as we have become more intentional, particularly Black women. women, becoming more
Mhm.
intentional about talking about what it looks like for us to heal and be well. So there is so much more conversation about it, that meaning there then is so much more support. There are so many more resources. So it's not just therapy, because definitely it's therapy, but you might not be able to afford to go to therapy every
Mhm.
day. So
Mhm.
what are the other rituals? What are the other, daily grounding, rituals that you have to help you on the days when you're not in therapy? And so another thing that I'm doing outside of having a coach and like doing the artist way and doing those exercises is I also am a member of Miriam Hasna's new school. I know you've seen her quotes. I don't think that she would call herself this, but I'm gonna call her like a manifestation and a guru and a healer. I know she
Mhm.
wouldn't use that language, but that's how I'm going to describe it right now. So she's often just talking about shadow self, talking about healing ourselves, talking about vibrations. But this school that she has online is basically this membership portal full of classes that she has taught, and each class has at least two sections to it,
Mhm.
and they're like 2.5 hour classes where
Mm.
she's giving you tools. She's talking about her own practice in mastering these things. And so I'm just a couple weeks in, but a girlfriend of mine has been a member for years. It's just $25 a month. This is not
Oh.
an advertisement, but her course library
Mm.
is just ridiculous. It's like raising your vibration, emotional alchemy, intuitive guidance, soulmate relationships, awakening abundance. Right now, I'm doing part 2 of manifestation, miracles, and magics. I mean, it's just so much deep work. And it's not like these throwaway little, 25-minute videos of her just talking about it. It's literally like, here, let me
Mhm.
show you. Here are some tools that I use. This is how I'm doing this, whatever. I have appreciated her work for so many years because I have, she's one of those people who's doing public healing work that I have seen her journey, and I've seen like the manifestation of like, I really am healing this portion of myself. I really have called this to myself. So I also just kind of wanted to say that because I think that a part of how I'm feeling right now is as a result of like, I even have the tool to know how to sit down in the morning and say, how do I want to
Mhm.
feel today? Because of a lot of the extra, like, kind of supplemental healing and growth work that I've been doing outside of, well, inside of therapy, but also outside of therapy as well.
I've never asked myself that question. How do I want to feel? Like,
Mhm.
even saying it is like, "Oh, wait, how do I
Yeah.
want to feel today?" I have written on my whiteboard right in front of me, it's for my last therapy session 2 weeks ago. My therapist said she
Mm,
told me to write it down, so I was like, "Okay." So I took out my little, a dry erase, and it says, "Do what's right
mhm,
for you." And I'm like, "I don't
mhm,
understand."
mhm. I don't even
I'm like,
understand that,
"Oh my
honey.
god, that's so scary." Like,
Yeah,
so how do
yeah.
I wanna feel today? That is I think that our listeners are gonna love that, and anyone who hasn't asked themselves that is gonna be like, wait, huh?"
That is so powerful for me because when I am awake enough
Mhm,
to think about that in the morning, like, how do I want to feel today? Like that intention,
mhm.
setting that intention helps me make certain decisions. If I want to feel soft and easy, the music that I listen to first thing in the morning is a very different music than
Ah,
it would be otherwise.
yes.
Or it that will determine how I approach certain conversations that may need to happen today. I'm a Capricorn, so like I am a member of doingthemost.com. So every single day, my schedule can just look like, and at 2:30, I'm going to be doing this.
Mhm,
And so having that as a tool for myself, how do I want to feel today, means that if I start the morning saying I want to feel very easeful and soft, that there may be things that I put on my schedule today that just really wasn't mandatory. I really don't have to do it today. I just was piling on extra things in order to get it done. I love being able to mark things off my to-do list. That has been a game changer for me, being able to decide like, how do I want to feel? Not even though just how do I want to feel
mhm,
today. There are certain situations like, maybe I'm working with my team about something, some project that we're working on, and something may be causing me tension. And I will ask myself, how do I want to feel in this situation?
mm,
And that, just deciding how I want to feel, oh, I want to feel supported. I want to feel like my friends and that my team are really going out of their way to check on me. I
mhm,
want to feel, and then once I get very clear about those things, then it becomes like a question of like, well, how can I get to this? Like, if that's the destination, how do I get to that? And so then it becomes like, oh, okay, well, I need to have a conversation with this person because I need to let them know this is what I really need from you.
Right.
They might have been doing something, but what I really need from you is this.
Mhm.
And yeah, just a lot of it has that asking yourself that question, like, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel in this situation? How do I want to feel about that? Whatever it is, it just will really cause you to have to grow up and really advocate for yourself from day to day, because it's like, well, if that's how you want to feel, then what are you doing to get to that?
That
And
yeah. I
ooh,
love that. So
yeah.
what else? What else? I mean, usually I save this for the end, but we're already in it. What else are you we're already in it. What else are you practicing right
I
now?
am a master
Mhm.
manifester as well. I think I've always been. Well, I think we all are. I think we all can manifest whatever it is that we want. Because manifestation really is just like, we've called it several things over the years. Like, I set goals and then I go and I crush them, whatever. So that's like, okay, in order to set a goal, you have to like think about what it is that you want. And then you set it as a goal. Like, I want this and then I want it by this time frame. And then you get action items.
Mhm.
For me, though, as I have grown emotionally and spiritually, I've really learned that manifestation is more of the spiritual inner work. Manifestation is really like deep worthiness work, honestly.
Hmm.
I'll think about something that I want. And then after I think about something that I want, I start visualizing it, seeing myself in that experience or in that situation. And then as soon as I start feeling like, oh, am I good enough for that? I know what I need to do. I need to lose more weight before I can have that. I need to, I will start hearing myself like creating these low vibrational stories about what it means for me to get to that. And that's when I'm like, oh, okay, God needed me to desire that
Mhm.
so that I could realize that this unworthiness was sitting there and get that
Mm.
out the way. So manifestation for me, like I really have started to speed up the process of like what I'm calling to me showing up in my life, because it's no longer just goal setting
Mhm.
and then a whole bunch of action items. More than anything, probably 80%, just this inner spiritual healing is like, before I move to New York, I want to move to New York. And then I like get all these stories in my head about what it means for me to live in New York. Like, oh, when I first moved to New York, I'm gonna have to slum it out and be living in the hood and because rent costs so much and da 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 whatever. And then instantly it's like this, like, okay, but maybe you don't. Maybe
Mhm.
that doesn't have to be what it is. What would it look like for you to be able to move to New York and just be okay? And do you feel worthy of that? Do you feel worthy to move to New York and not have to be in hustle and grind mode? Do you feel worthy of that? And if you don't feel worthy of that, what's in the way? Then I start to think about other people who live in New York. It's this girl, I ain't gonna say her name.
Mhm.
It's this girl that that's on social media. She kind of famous just for being famous.
Okay.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. And she knows it too. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I like about her. But actually it's a white girl and she lives in New York in this beautiful studio apartment and really doesn't have a job and just be living her life like it's golden. I remember one day it hit me as I was like processing this idea of like you got to struggle and hustle to live in New York.
Mhm.
I remember thinking about this girl and thinking, well, she's the proof that that's not true. And then I brought up the fact that it's a white girl because I also want to acknowledge that then like the next thing that I went to after I had that revelation was like, oh, but white privilege.
Mhm.
And like I had to start thinking about like no matter what the systems or institutions of this world look like, God is not abiding by those rules.
Right.
And so that doesn't mean that they don't impact us on a daily basis despite the fact that God isn't abiding by them. But what in me is willing to like move that out of the way and refuse to submit or to surrender to that idea, like what work could I do to decide that if I want to live in a healthy safe space in New York City, and not have to work 13 jobs to be able to
Ugh.
afford it, you
Mhm.
know what would that look like for me? And so again, so much of that has been worthiness work. I am not unworthy. I would go walk through the Upper West Side sometimes and just like, especially around Christmas time, I'd walk through
Mm.
and just be like, look at them with their little elevators and their clean streets and
Yeah, the
their
streets be so sparkly. The pavement
yeah,
be sparkling.
yeah, they be sparkling streets and like and it's quiet and ain't no, ambulance coming down the street every 3 seconds. this is amazing. And it really, like, that kind of, visualization is like, I just go and I was just sit in that space and be like, oh, no, 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 I am worthy of this. These
Mm,
people, this doesn't mean that they're not worthy of it,
mm,
but these people aren't more worthy of this type of experience than I am.
mhm.
I am worthy of this. And I'm telling you what I know. Worthiness healing is manifestation work. Every
Wow.
single day of the week, like getting to the place where you deal with whatever it is in you that's making you feel like you don't deserve XYZ, that's the work. It's
Mhm,
not it's not like a whole bunch of action items like step 1, step 2, step 3. Even though those things will come, right? Like in my worthiness work, some of my rituals, right? Like I have an altar in my home. I bring and I put fresh flowers on this altar, a couple times a week. And then I realized that really I wasn't bringing these flowers for some deity. I was bringing these flowers because I deserve flowers. Even when I'm praying then in my altar space, it'll be like, okay, you don't need to do anything. Just be still. I'm currently manifesting Bay. You don't need to do anything about that. You
mhm,
just need to be still. You just need to be still. And then one day there'll just be this whisper, this knowing in my heart, okay, now call such and such. Y'all gonna be at a baby shower together next week.
mhm,
Boom, that's gonna be it. It'll
mhm.
and that's a very ambiguous, like not real scenario, but I'm just saying like it'll be something like that. But I've gotten so much of the unworthiness junk out of the way that I'm able to hear spirit, or I'm able to, hear myself think about like, okay, what's next for me? What move should I make now instead of making a whole bunch of moves out of desperation or insecurities.
What is resonating with me as a Black woman is, and it makes me really emotional, how much unworthiness that we feel
Mhm,
from like just society. I mean, you know all the ways,
mhm,
how much that programming is like repeated to us, and how much that is therefore blocking our potential for a healthy mate, or a healthy career, or even success in our business. We know that Black women are opening businesses left and right, but the success of those, what's that look like?
mhm,
And so that healing work, I mean, this is like, to me, this is like the golden ticket for specifically for Black women, because I know how challenging life can be, especially here in the States, but just in general for us. And to hear that, like, oh, healing work
mhm,
is going to literally propel and can literally propel us to all of the things that we want. We just don't know how to get. But there's that, do I deserve it? And that challenge of, well, of course a white girl can get it, you know what I'm saying?
mhm,
And
mhm,
challenging that within us. How do we, go about really healing those things when it's so programmed, even from our mothers, our grandmothers?
mhm. I was doing, like I said, I was doing like very like forward, white facing. I went to seminary to get a master's degree in social change, but the emphasis for me was on spiritual and religious leadership, and then womanist theology, and then racial justice. So there
Mm,
are all these elements that I was kind of really pulling into this social change, degree and focus. So a lot of what that looks like then is anti-racism education. They're the people that have the money, and the people who were getting paid for, anti-racism education really was the white people, a lot of white
mm,
people. Like even think kind of shade, no shade, like Robin DiAngelo
mhm,
is such a huge name in this anti-racism space. But it's like the idea that a white woman would be making millions of dollars writing books about anti-racism
mhm.
is just insanity, because the audacity to benefit or to profit, really anti-racism education work is coming from people of color. It's coming
Right.
from people who've been marginalized, people who've been experiencing it. And so even if she's in that book citing her sources, I guarantee you they didn't get compensated in the way that she got compensated for pulling all those sources together. But very often that's what I was seeing, especially because I was living in the Bay Area at the time when I got
Mhm.
my, or that's where I got my master's degree from. Seeing in the Bay Area so many white people really just profiting off of so-called liberal, anti-racism
Mhm.
education trainings, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was living in New York. This is a couple years after my degree. I was living in New York, and I was walking down the street listening to Patrice Colors, When They Call You a Terrorist,
Mm.
listening to it on audiobook. And Patrice's brother has been diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic, I think, but just has these very violent outbursts and has been, as a result of his mental illness, has been called a terrorist. He's like on one of America's great terrorism lists, whatever. That was crazy. This American-born Black boy, is a terrorist, but even the fact that we know that his behavior is directly connected to his mental illness. So what they would do when he first was coming in and out of jail is they created this like community circle organization to help him to reintegrate into society. So it's like lots of men would gather around him and make sure that he felt supported, and also making sure that the women were safe because he could have violent outbursts sometimes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm listening to this, walking down the street. I think to myself, because my nephews, who at the time were 8 and 10, were living in Stanley, North Carolina, going to this predominantly white school that was not able to support them. It was almost violent the way that school wasn't able to support them. As a result of this program that Patrice is talking about that they created for her brother, I thought, oh, we should do something like that for my nephews. We should create this program where we could really like gather around them and make sure that the community supports them and they're getting everything they need since this school isn't. I keep noting that I'm walking down the street in Harlem because I stop in the middle of the sidewalk and I say out loud, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm listening to this book on audiobook, so I got it in my earbuds. I don't have time for that. And I really feel very frustrated and sad that in order for my nephews to have a very basic, even playing field, we got to create all this extra curriculum for them. We got to take away from the time that we would be spending on our art or our play or our love or our joy or our dreams to build this anti-racism platform, to ensure that white people cut it out, and that, and to ensure that in the meantime, until they cut it out, to ensure that we are very basic okay.
Right.
Not even thriving, just very basic okay. And so I keep listening to the book and I realize that Patrice is an artist, and she's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter movement. We don't know that about her, really. That's not one of the things that when you first hear Patrice Concolors, you don't know that she's a celebrated artist, that she has received awards for the art that she has created. And that then starts to piss me off because I'm like, how this woman, like, she got other stuff to be doing than to be marching to Selma every other day, trying to make sure that we have these very basics, like the very basic right of her brother is to be able to be well and whole. But because that doesn't come with the system, they got to create all this supplemental material to make sure that he's well and whole. What's happening when they're creating all this supplemental material is, again, like I said, it's taking away from the time that they could be devoting to thriving, to healing, to wellness. We don't have time for that.
It puts us in like a consistent survival mode too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That is ultimately what happened for me. I started to think about, like, dang, I'm doing all this work and in a lot of ways thriving. I'm doing quote fingers, thriving, because I was getting booked to come and teach and speak and whatever. But is this really what I wanted to be doing? Like, that's what I was thinking. Like, is this really what I want to do? Like, as my highest self, am I out here teaching white people how to be basically, kind, like, just real, like, this is the way that you can not kill Black people. Don't you just like, is this really what I want to be doing with my life? And I realized that the answer was a big old Sophie of color purple. Hell no. So then I started asking a lot of my girlfriends who were really excelling in their work, whether it was anti-racism work, education, whatever, like across industry. And the majority of them, I would say like 99.9% of every one of my girlfriends, I'm talking about making good money. About 99% of them said, hell no, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm doing this because something happened and I couldn't do Broadway. So I decided to create this. Something happened and it felt like, oh, okay, if we don't do it, it won't get done. Something happened and I started this podcast because there is no space where Black women were being centered in this discussion, right? Like, all this stuff we were doing, even when we were thriving in those areas, all this stuff we were doing. And the reality is, if we were actually living on an even playing field, we would not be doing that work. So that said to me that we really were not living into the fullness of our capacity, because so much of our work was centering resistance and not ease and play and joy and dreaming. All of that long story to get to your question, how do we begin to do that work? I genuinely feel like a lot of us need to stop, fall back, like literally as you fall back, like throw your hands off of your work for a minute. Take, just really start asking that very basic question. If it were not for the systems that exist that keep us in certain marginalized positions and in these identities that really prevent us from showing up as XYZ, would I be doing this work? I think if the answer is yes, the next question then is, would I be doing this work this way? Because a lot of us might still be educators, but the way that our public education work looked, it might not look like this. It might look like a very different thing. But we realized then, very similar to Patrice and very similar to where I was when I was thinking about my nephews, we were like, okay, I'm an educator, so I should create this curriculum. And so, okay, yeah, I would still be teaching. I feel very called to teach. I feel like that is my purpose. I do a very good job at it. But what would I be teaching if it weren't for these things? It wouldn't be this. I would probably be teaching just redacted. I can't even say what I'd be teaching on this podcast because I be respecting people's mamas and all. But yeah, I'd probably be teaching something, excuse me, pardon me. And I don't think I would be teaching like, hey guys, let's get together and talk about this anti-racism education. Like, I don't care about that. I want to talk about love and so even think about that. And I'm done with this sermon, but even think about that. It's like you mentioned our careers, you mentioned our love life, you mentioned those things just as it pertains to us, like doing healing work around worthiness as, to become the highest version of ourselves. Like, let's linger on that love life piece for a minute. If we had really had the time to invest in dreaming our highest dreams for our healthiest, most whole soul satisfying love, where we could be soft, all the time. And so, yeah, like,
that gives me
honey,
chills because the thought is like, oh, like you mean like the movies?
Yes, where we could be soft and where we could really heal. I have some girlfriends, Khadijah and Zakia Abdul, my team, they have this work, it's called Unearth and Bloom. Yeah, they talk about their work as intergenerational healing instead of breaking generational curses. And a part of the reason why they use that language versus breaking generational curses is because they're like, intergenerational healing, that feels like something that we can ease ourselves into.
Yeah, you're right. That sounds like a lot of intercessory prayers
yeah,
and bullets
God,
and howling at the heavens. You're right.
We gotta sweat. We got to tarry for hours. And we don't have time for that if our ultimate goal is, I want to feel soft today. No, I gotta break these generational curses.
What are you doing, girl? I'm breaking some generational curses today,
Yeah. To put on the whole armor of God. Like, I just want to put on a slip and lay around today, though.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I think, like I said, all those words to say, I feel like the way that we begin that is to fall back and really start thinking about our dreams. And that looks like, from a strategic perspective, one of the tools that I use when I teach this idea of dreaming ourselves free, particularly for Black women, I use Solange as an example. I go from Seat at the Table. It was very heavy. The reason why it spoke to so many of us is because it was such a Black girl experience, like in that album. How you go from Weary of the Ways of the World then to the very, not just 2 years later, another album comes out, and the very first song on the album is Saw Things I Imagined. And it's a drastically different energy. The question that I ask then when I teach this or when I workshop this is, let's take a minute to just imagine all the things Solange must have done between these albums to go from Weary of the Ways of the World to Saw Things She Imagined. And we just throw everything we can think of in the pot. We know for sure she was smoking some weed. Like, let's just get that out in the open. We know that, you know? We know that she probably was traveling. We know that she probably was spending some time in isolation. We now know that she was getting a divorce. We now, we know that she was making new art. We know that she was probably, no, we know this, not probably, she was dancing to miscellaneous instrumentals in her MacBook camera. We know that she was, being playful. We know that she was maybe going on vacations by herself, maybe spending more time with her son, maybe, right? Like, we know. And so we could just keep imagining. It is our imagination. We weren't there with her. So we're using our imagination. But the theory that we have behind this, because we can call the scholars to this, we can call Toni Morrison and Zora Neale Hurston. And Zora Neale Hurston says that the rocks have memories. Well, Toni Morrison builds on that theory then. And she says, if the rocks have memories, then we use our spiritual imagination to fill in the blanks, because we understand as Black people, particularly here in America as a result of chattel slavery, that there is a point at which the written documentation of who we are is cut off. So, but we trust that whatever our spiritual imagination brings us to is the truth. We trust that that's what happened. This isn't just an imagination. This is our memory. Because if the rocks can remember, then certainly our spiritual selves can remember. And so that's what we do then. And we're just using Solange as a tool because we can literally feel the drastic difference between the energy of one album to the next album. So what does our spiritual imagination suggest that she was doing? We put all those things in a pot, and then we look at the pot and we say, I don't do 98% of these things ever. I don't give myself dance breaks. I don't, go for long walks. I don't create even though I am a creator. And we realize that so much of our work is being serious all the time, because we got to be serious. So much of our work is being really hard all the time. And I don't have a judgment of that, but for a lot of us, it's that hardness, because like, am I safe here? I don't even want to give y'all my smiles because I don't know if I'm safe here to smile.
There's this
And
fear,
so,
right? Of if I'll speak specifically to social media because it's something that I've been challenging myself with. There's this fear of like, if I blend my sensuality with my business, will I just default to the Black sexy woman? Like, there's this fear of living in the freedom, and I would grow frustrated many years at looking at, for instance, and this is no shade to white women. This is it's a generalization, but looking at the freedom to be able to move between, being sexual or sensual and owning it, to being taken serious in business and being like, you got to choose. There's a pressure, and that's like, we have to choose. So even you saying play, it's like, oh, play and work.
Yeah. Imagine, okay, so when you were a kid though, so this is going back to like dreaming. When I was a child, the stuff that I dreamt that I would do when I got older is pretty much a negative 27 what I do now.
Negative 27.
Right? Like, I'm doing the extreme opposite in so many ways. Some of what my dream work is doing is also what you were just saying about, like, what we're talking about more of in therapy these days are healing our inner child and doing that shadow work. And so what happens when we heal our inner child is we go back to the moment when somebody convinced us that being a ballerina was not realistic because you're a Black girl and your body looks like this. And so you wouldn't really get, casted or, chosen for that role, or performing on Broadway because you are a 6 foot, round Black woman with natural hair. There are no roles for you. So you need to go ahead and start thinking about some other career, or, whatever the thing is. And so then we end up getting pushed into jobs where it's not really fun. We can enjoy ourselves, but it's not fun. But the jobs that we imagined when we were children, other than the jobs when we were trying to like impress somebody. Like, I remember saying, like, in the 3rd grade, like, I want to be an operations research analyst when I grow up.
Everyone was like, my baby.
Baby, she's so smart. See, I told y'all. Meanwhile, today I don't know what an operations research analyst is, and it is certainly a job that would have wounded my soul, my whole spirit and soul, if I would have been sitting on this phone right now talking to you about, I'm an operations research analyst, and basically what that means is like, girl, give me a break. Give me a break. So yes, like going back to that childhood dreaming, it's like, what did
Mhm.
I dream? And at which point did I start believing that that wasn't possible for me anymore? And that doesn't mean that we are all making drastic career changes, but that means that we start figuring out, what does it look like for me to be in this work that I'm in? And to, again, using that language of like softness and play and ease and joy, and, like, how do I incorporate that? And or for some of us, it might look like, I don't want to do that at all anymore. What have I
Mhm.
been doing? I don't even want
Mhm.
to do that. It was making me good money, but it was certainly not satisfying myself. I had a girlfriend who was in her junior year, about to finish her junior year of her degree program in
Mhm.
sociology, and was like, I really want to be a
Mm.
designer. And we went to University of Cincinnati together, and she changed her major from
Mhm.
sociology to apply to the design school at the University of Cincinnati, which is a very world-renowned design school. Changed her major to design, extended her degree for basically like 2
Wow.
years, even though she's almost done. And now here we are, though, years later, and she is getting
Uh-huh.
shmoney as the lead designer of a lingerie
Wow.
company. And there's so much healing work that had to happen for her to get to that point, because me and this particular girlfriend, we come from very
Mhm.
similar background. Super safe,
Mhm.
super Christian, very like stay focused. And also, funny thing is, both of us are
Okay.
Capricorn, so like very like, step one, step
Mhm.
two, step three is the way that we think about things. And to be willing to be like, at the end of her junior year of college, like, ooh, I let this get too
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
And now I want to, make a major change, but I'm so invested in like feeling like my soul is
Mhm.
satisfied, that I'm just willing to add on these years to my degree program at this point, if it means that on the other side of this, I get to do what it is that I actually wanted to do from jump, before I let my family kind of convince me that this was the safer
Mhm.
route for me. I do think that it's some dreaming, some like reimagining, or, remembering and then reimagining what those childhood, easeful, playful dreams look like. And then maybe we don't totally change our career or change our path, but we do at the very least incorporate them into our daily life. I loved to draw, so that's a thing that
Right.
I do now in my life, just to keep me sane, or rooted or grounded, or,
I grew
whatever.
up really Christian. Like, I mean, it's now called
Mhm.
not now called, but I didn't know it was called fundamentalist. I thought I was just saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy
Mhm.
Ghost.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yes,
right,
fire baptized.
right,
Keep
and
going,
non-denominational
girl.
too, but then very religious at the same time. Um,
Mm, mhm,
so
mhm,
I have a specific question for growing up in the church as a Black woman now. What advice do you
mhm.
have for us healing the fear we have of being free? And that's no knock, but a lot of, growing up, like, wait till marriage, all the rules. I think a lot of that does play into us not feeling like we can be free, or feeling like our freedom has to happen in silence and in quiet, out of or in the
Oh,
shadows
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, honey. You're talking to somebody who's been preaching in the pulpit since she was 8.
Mm.
So, certainly, the fact that earlier in this conversation I mentioned a little altar situation, you
Mhm.
better believe that my family got a problem with that little altar situation. You better leave that, unless it is at the front of the church
Yes.
with the "This do in remembrance of me" sketched into it. They don't wanna hear nothing about no altar. That sound demonic. Mm-mm, I'm not playing them games. Cut it out. We need to call a prayer circle and a
And
fast.
a
So,
fast.
yeah, my answer is actually very, very
Mhm.
simple, and this is from somebody who has done deep, deep, I was going to therapy 2 times a week at some point about this.
Mhm.
Because my therapist was like, "If I had a dime for every time I heard you say, 'I don't wanna bring shame to my family,' I
Mm.
could quit my practice and be rich." Whew, honey. The answer genuinely is, I got to this place for myself where I started to kind of go down the list of whose voice I was
Mhm.
hearing whenever I was feeling tension about a thing that I wanted to do, or a way that I wanted to feel, or something that I wanted to express. And I would figure out whose voice is that. 99.99999% of the time it was not my voice, and it was not God's
Mhm.
voice. And then I would say, is that person currently happier than me?
Hmm.
Whew.
Hmm.
When I tell you that 100% of the time the answer was
Mhm.
no, that really that didn't always make it like okay, well, let me jump out the window and do this thing. But that really started to kind of punch me in the chest a little bit, like, oh, you are basing your decisions off of people who not really soul satisfied themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like the audacity to give my power over to, I just tweeted this the other day. It was freedom. When you realize the folk who held the power to define freedom for you ain't.
There's so much more to come. Hang tight for a quick message from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. Thank you for staying tuned, and we are back.
That was it. Like, that is an ongoing thing for me. It's like somebody might express a disappointment in some choice that I made. Let me help you understand that I'm 37 years old. So like, I'm grown. So somebody expresses disappointment in a choice that I made as a 37-year-old woman. And I think to myself, okay, this thing that I did made me feel free. This person that I respect feels like it was wrong. Also, they are not free in this area. So the audacity of me to change my mind about this thing, this decision that I made because this person feels uncomfortable, really gives me an opportunity to offer deep empathy for them because they're not free in that area, which is part of the reason why they're wrestling with my choice to do it. I'll give you a perfect example. I was having a conversation with my mom about, I was there at the beginning of March visiting my family. My middle sister and my nephews live there as well. And my baby nephew is actually my godson as well. And I'm just obsessed with him to the point that one day I was on FaceTime with him and he acted like he didn't know who I was. And I got off the phone with him and cried and bought a plane ticket because I needed to pull up on him. You're not about to act like you don't know me. And when it was time for me to leave, I got to go home. I pay a lot of money to live in Harlem for me to not be in my apartment. So I'm talking to my mom a couple days later, and we were talking about mothering. And I was like, I haven't had children out of my body, but I've been raising these babies. And she was like, you ain't no mother because it's too easy for you to leave. And we kind of ended the conversation at that, like I needed to go do something. But the next morning I was doing my morning pages and that came up for me. Like when my mom said that, that really bothered me. It actually offended me for her to say that because when I say I've been raising babies, I mean I have potty trained plural children. And like, I have lots of nieces and nephews and little cousins. Like I have been raising these kids and like reading the books and like going back to sisters and cousins, like maybe we should think about this, to do different things with this generation of children. Like I've been raising these kids. And so I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I really wanted to talk to you about that conversation we had yesterday about mothering. When you said I'm not a mother because it's easy for me to leave, what I realized you were saying is that you don't feel like you have the freedom to leave. You don't have the freedom to make choices for yourself that don't center your daughters and your grandchildren. So anytime we make a choice that doesn't center you, it feels like rejection to you. Like we must not love you the same way that you love us. And that's not accurate. That's not the proof of love, is to totally sacrifice yourself, to sacrifice your dreams, to sacrifice, because what we know for sure is that I can't live in Stanley, North Carolina. My whole spirit, soul, and body would die if I, like, who it is that I am. It's not possible for me to live there. We know that factually, right? She agrees with this. Like, yeah, no, but you can live in Charlotte. I could not live in Charlotte. My whole spirit, soul, and body would shrivel up and die. I'm sure that I could figure it out, of course, because I'm certain that there are, free and audacious Black women living in those spaces as well. But that just for me and who I'm committed to being and invested in being, that just wouldn't work for me. I've tried it. It didn't work. I had to get up out of there. But making the choice to like have to be the aunt that comes and visits with, I'm gonna be the elaborate auntie with the fur coat on for no reason. Like, that's just what it is at this point, for a minute. But so it's like making that choice doesn't mean that I don't love them. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that I am very committed to always choosing my highest self, even when it's hard. And so I think that's it. I think that it's like, realizing that the people who have created a lot of our story about what it means to be free aren't actually even free in certain areas themselves, usually not free in the areas that they have felt some kind of way, about the choices that we've made. For so many of us, for our own mothers, or for so many of us, for the elders in our family or in our community, if we got to the source of like, what's this thing that they're rejecting right now within me? How do they feel about that within themselves? And that usually is like oh girl, you don't want me to be free because maybe it's protection. Maybe you feel like if I get that free that I won't be safe, that people will talk about me, that you tried that at some point, it didn't work out for you. Or maybe it's like how dare you be that free? I was never able to be that free. I think some of that is it's a little bit of both of those things sometimes for our mothers and for our, for our women folk elders. It's like I was never able to be that free, and or like I can't fathom when I tried that a little bit, it didn't work out for me. So, I can't fathom it working now. And so for me, in conclusion to that, I just come back to what I said in the beginning. Like, I genuinely just have this moment where I ask, is this person that's, kind of pushing back on this idea or this decision, are they more free than me? Are they more happy than me? Are they more satisfied than me? And I try not to do it as a judgment, just like as a like, what's your fruit?
Right.
If you're walking around here and I ain't seen you smile in a week, then you probably can't tell me what joy look like. Because beloved, are you happy?
Do you think that in doing that we are beginning to mother ourselves?
Oh yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to go to this when I was in therapy. One of the things I needed to deal with something traumatic that happened to me when I was a little girl. And my parents didn't have the right response to it. And I had deep grace for them. My parents were like, in their early 20s. So I don't know how I would have been raising all these babies, at 20, 21, 22. But so I have grace for them, but also I acknowledge like there are some places where they dropped the ball, So this thing happened to me, and my parents didn't respond the way that I needed them to. So here I am years later, still processing this thing that happened to me, when I was 4. I finally one day, just in therapy, just my therapist had made this suggestion. And so I did this. I started to think about, what did little EbonyJanice need in that moment? What would have been helpful to me? Which is the reason why probably part of the reason why I have the language of like softness now, because that's what I needed. I needed like this very gentle softness. I have a heavier voice, and so I come from a family with a whole bunch of women. My grandma raised 6 girls by herself, so like I come from a very like strong women family lineage, and we kind of all sound like this, or some, we ain't got a whole bunch of sopranos in our family, basically. And so even the tone of voice could be triggering for me sometimes, because it's like in the moment when little EbonyJanice was having this kind of traumatic experience, what I needed was like a baby. Oh, my parents' voices, I don't even know if they're capable of that. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like, even like trying to think about that, like, girl, where was you gonna get that from? Like where would that have come from? And so now it's like in that moment of me doing that healing, it was up to me to kind of be like, and so one major thing that happened for me at that time was I had to offer that to myself, and I also had to get a new therapist, because my therapist had a voice that was heavy like mine. And I told her, I was like, what I think I need is a old auntie who will just talk soft to me for a while, because I was doing such intensive therapy. And she like agreed. She lost good money, because I was seeing her 2 days a week. She lost good money to recommend my current therapist, who is an older Black Jamaican woman who weekly be like, Ebony, is that true?
You're like, oh,
Yeah, it's
wow.
just a sweet little voice. Yeah. So I think, definitely so part of that reparenting then, which is what I was getting to, looks like me giving myself permission to think about and visualize little EbonyJanice, and say to her the things that she needed in those moments. And then also cultivating resources and community, and like my spiritual and mental health community is like full of teachers and healers and therapists and whatever, people who are also like, that is what they're offering me. They're offering me a very gentle, it's not like my healing work right now isn't very like
Okay.
aggressive. It's very gentle and soft. And so it's like, because that's what I needed when I was a little girl.
Yes.
And so because right now I'm trying to heal through some hardness, from my childhood, it's like, oh, well, what I need then, even as a grown woman, what I need is like a community of people, doing this work with me that can be like, Ebony, is that, do you really believe that?
Mm.
I don't, girl, you're right. You're right, girl. I don't even believe
But this is it actually goes back to, how do I want to feel?
it. Absolutely. How do I want to feel is like imagine if when you were a little
Mhm.
child, if you had the language and the permission to wake up in the morning and be like, this is what I want to do today.
Yeah.
This how, and like, for so many of us that grew up in very fundamentalist, Christian
Mhm.
environments, and also I would say for a lot of Black
Mhm.
people, the way that we were raised. Sorry,
It's
Harlem's
okay, Harlem.
happening outside.
I live in Harlem too. New York is happening. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. So for so many of us, and I would say definitely for Black people too, even if you weren't raised necessarily in a Christian
Mhm.
church, but it's a very strict, and it's for a reason. It's it was for like preservation. Our parents wanted us to be very well
Yes.
behaved so that when we went out in public, nobody could say anything to us in a way that would get us into trouble or cause us
Mhm.
harm. As a result of that, how much freedom did you have as a child to be like, I want to do like this. I want to show up like
Uh-huh.
this today. It was like there was already this schedule and this agenda for you. And so now as an adult, you're still on the schedule and agenda. And this is an opportunity in reparenting yourself to kind of fall back and be like, do I really have to do this
Right.
stuff that is on my agenda today? Or am I so used to filling my agenda with things to
Mhm.
do? Right? Like I talk often about the fact that my dad is a 60 something year old Black man from Meridian,
Mm.
Mississippi. And so when I FaceTime my dad, I'll be laying
Mhm.
down because what was I supposed to be doing? My dad will be like, "Man, you always laying down. What you did you want me to be running on the treadmill when I called you? Like, what did you want me to be doing?" But that's really in a lot of ways how I was raised.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing something? Get up,
Mhm.
make up your bed,
Mhm.
clean up this room. It's
Mhm.
Saturday. I don't have anywhere to be. And so I carried a lot of that into my adult life. And so again, some of that healing, particularly around, childhood um wrong teachings or, things that didn't necessarily serve my whole self, is like, again, just asking that question, like, how do I want to feel
Mhm.
today? And deciding how I want to feel today gives me the opportunity to like really kind of set the agenda or change the agenda, or realize like, yeah, some of what I want to feel today won't in the long run get me to the goal that I'm. So like, how do I make it as easeful as
Mhm.
possible? I might not be able to take a nap every single day, but I can definitely not pile on 100 things in one day,
Right. As we near the end, I just what the end of the interview, as we near the end, um, I
Lord help us.
Lord help us. But what this really also is bringing up in me is, and I'll use the subway as a perfect example because 50 million people be on there at once. Um,
Mhm,
how triggering as an adult, a grown adult woman living in New
mm.
York, how triggering it can be to see little white kids playing around and like, why don't they sit down somewhere? Da-da-da, like just feeling mad, just feeling mad. And just being like, why are you so like you are angry? This little kid is, being a little kid. Like, well, why don't they sit down somewhere?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
realizing how much of that, because even when you speak to, how do I want to feel, and the healing work that happens in manifesting, I just think about all the work you're doing and how so much of it and how it's centered around us looking inside of ourselves, specifically Black women, but looking inside of ourselves because we so much project what we could not have onto
Oh my God, yes.
others. And it's like, but if we heal this, then things open. It really is profound for me right now. It's opening up a lot.
And yeah, that's real. That's such a perfect example of like seeing little children, even and you use little white children as an example,
Mm-hmm.
but I will even use like one of the things that really opened up my eyes to needing to shift some of my language around raising children is, supporting my sisters, cousins, whatever, and raising their
Mm-hmm.
children. I remember there was a time when I did believe in children getting whoopings. Like, oh, he need a whooping. I could tell y'all be whooping him, whatever. And then my oldest nephew was born. I remember he was maybe like 3, 4 years old. I had fixed him something. It's some macaroni and cheese. He was like, I don't want that macaroni and cheese. And I was like, well, you gonna eat it? And he was like, I don't want it. Like, just he wasn't even whining about it. He's
Right.
like 3, 4 years old. Like, I don't want it. And I was like, but you're going to eat it. And he was like, I don't like it. And that really was the eye opener of all eye openers,
Wow.
that we be out here trying to force children. That's the way I was raised. If I
Yeah.
put it on the table, you're gonna eat it or you
Yeah.
won't eat. And that's a very simple, right? Like, you get it if your family was poor or y'all
Uh-huh.
didn't have a lot of money or resources. It's like, it's coming from that place. But then here we are. The baby don't got to eat that macaroni and cheese. He don't like
You
it.
don't
He
like
doesn't.
it.
We're gonna force him to eat this macaroni and cheese. It's like oh, that's my ego.
Yeah.
My ego feels like this child ain't finna tell me what they not gonna do. Like, he isn't a person. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't have feelings. Like, he can't think for himself. Like,
Mhm.
if he get hungry enough, he won't come back to this table and eat that macaroni and cheese.
Oh.
But no, you gotta do it the way that I said do it when I said do it. And so even think about exactly what I just said. Think about that for yourself.
Mhm.
There are moments when you just don't have the energy for something, but
Mhm.
you forcing yourself through it. You're
That's
gonna do
so
it anyway.
real. It could be responding to
And
a text. I'm like, I don't want to. You gon' okay, I'm gonna respond to this text.
yeah, yeah, force yourself to do something. Meanwhile, the little child in you is like, I don't want to. I
Mhm.
don't I don't feel like it. And
Mhm.
again, the example I give where it's possible that this baby's gonna come back later and eat the macaroni and cheese. It's like, I could come back later and respond to this, or I could do this later, or the truth is, it really won't make me feel good to engage in this experience, so I'm just
Yeah.
not gonna do it. And like, being able to prioritize like your ease or your softness or your literally, for real, because we legit could talk about this all day long.
Mhm.
But I was just thinking about I went to I went to London. I haven't said this publicly because I be keeping people out of my business, but now that ain't a thing no more, I'm gonna say it. I
Okay.
went to London in November because I was dating this little man from London, whatever. Excuse me, pardon me. And oh my God, when I say that I was maybe day 2 in London,
Mhm.
thinking, I'm not coming back to the United States of America
Mm.
and to the republic for which it stands. I'm not coming back because I felt very. This is I bring the man into the story
Mm.
very simply because of every day he would be like, "What do you want to eat?"
Mm.
And or he had plans already.
Mhm.
And so one day I had to go. I didn't go to London just for this man. I actually had an event to
Mhm.
do there as well. But the event was in Bristol. I was
Mhm.
staying in London though, because that's where he lived. And so I went to Bristol, which is like 2 hours away from London, like 2 hours away from where I was staying.
Mhm.
On my way back, I texted him. We were supposed to have dinner that night. I texted him and I was like, I'm really tired. I don't want to go out tonight. Maybe you could just come over and we could just, order something in.
Mhm.
I told him how far away from the house I was.
Mhm.
He said, I'm about an hour and 45 minutes away from there right now. So I will order food and have it delivered by the time you get there, because you'll get there before me.
Mhm.
And I just thought, wow, I don't have to think about just this very simple thing. It isn't even like a big deal on his end. It was very sweet of him, so I'm not trying to minimize that.
Mhm.
But really what it was for me was like, as a woman who is so responsible for so many things,
Talk about
not
it.
not having to think about what I was going to eat
Mhm.
every day felt so. It just made me feel like I could relax into my body in a way that I just don't get to on a regular basis. The other part about being in London in that time as well is that the day before my last day, I went to Buckingham Palace and I saw the guards outside, the
Mhm.
changing of the guards. And that's when I realized the major thing was that I hadn't seen police the entire time that I was there.
Mm.
And in London, their police don't carry guns
Right.
at all. And so I hadn't been hearing sirens. I hadn't been on public transportation dealing with a whole bunch of police officers standing around with their guns, depending on what part of town you live in New York, dealing with their machine
Yep.
guns. And also racism in the UK. It's not that it's not racism. It is, and it's there, and it's thick, and it's alive. But those aren't my white people, so it's a different impact on
Yep.
my body than being in this American soil. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
do.
yeah. So it's like, I know y'all ashy, but that ash ain't got nothing to do with me.
That
You know what I'm
actually got
saying? Like,
nothing to do
yeah,
with
that actually got nothing to do with me. And so it's like the ability to kind of walk around every day feeling soft and like a woman and
me.
like seen and sweet and being held and like just this very gentle experience that London offered me for that moment.
Mhm.
And I would like just for 27 seconds to acknowledge the fact that Black women in London might not be having that same experience.
Right,
You know what I'm
right, right.
saying? Like, again, because that's their, like, the grass is always greener. So
Uh-huh.
it's very possible that this man ain't treating, Black British women that way. And there's a novelty of me being a Black American woman. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't think that's the case, but that's, so I just want to acknowledge that may be my experience for whatever reason. It very well may not be the women who live there. It may not be their experience. But for me, because I was outside of all that, the heavy tension of what the US brings, for me, because I wasn't experiencing that heavy tension for that, period of time,
Mhm.
it gave me the opportunity to really start thinking about, how do I create that here? Since I live in New York for this period of time, what does it look like for me to create that here? And that kind of brings us back to the very beginning. And, in our closing, it brings us back to the very beginning of like this deep worthiness healing. Like,
Yes.
London really gave me the opportunity to think about that. Like, if a man can't make me feel like this ease
Mhm.
that felt like, then okay, then I'm good. I'm so responsible in every other area of my life.
Yeah.
If I'm in a relationship with a man and I still feel like I got to be responsible for all the things,
Mhm.
this isn't the space that will allow me to be my most lush, soft, gentle, flowing self. And
Yes.
that's how I envision myself, as my highest self. I'm not, thugged out, slightly bugged out all the time. So what does and so it's the same thing, like, even for my living situation. If my living situation can't make me feel like I can relax my bones into the cushions,
Yes.
for a minute, like if I'm not always on edge about what's going on outside, or, noise or what, if that can't be it, then that gives me the space to start to dream, okay, what space would give me that?
Right.
Where is that place? And let me do my worthiness work to know that, oh, no. I deserve to walk down the streets and they done picked up the dog poop. I
Mhm.
deserve that.
He said wait, did you say you cut out a little bit. Did you say you deserve to walk down the streets and they picked up the dog poop and they ain't no dog poop?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I deserve that.
I
I
deserve
am
that
worthy.
too. I hear you. I do.
I am worthy of that, honey.
I hear you. I hear you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Before we go, I have the last segment, hurt, heal, joy. You can think about
Mhm,
this. So what currently is hurting you? What do you want to heal? It could be in the world, yourself, anything. And what brings you joy?
I wanna use the language hurting,
Mhm,
but it's some tension for me.
mhm,
Is we're not quarantined, we're social distancing.
mhm.
Social distancing by myself, so I haven't experienced people's energy other than the cashiers, and they don't wanna talk, girl. They
Mm,
just wanna ring you up and get you out of there.
mhm, mhm.
Which is understandable, I'm being foolish. But yeah, so I'm maneuvering through the tension of like an undetermined amount of time for me to be in this space by myself.
Mhm,
Even though I am an introvert, I'm not socially awkward. Like, I
mhm.
just recharge in isolation. But I am currently like the cell phone that's been plugged in for 3 weeks.
Right, you're pretty charged up.
I'm pretty charged up. Like,
Mhm,
don't let the battery run out now because you
mhm,
don't have to charge it. So yeah, I'm very like maneuvering through some stuff just in this space about being here by myself for X amount of more time, whatever that will look like.
mhm.
I want to continue to heal just the worthiness stuff. I'm calling my beloved to me right now,
Mm.
and he ain't he ain't really nobody to play with. He's
Oh,
serious.
oh,
He's
okay.
beautiful. He's all the things. And anytime I feel myself like, oh, is that real? It's like, yeah, I deserve a happy ending. I deserve a fairy tale. I deserve a too good to be true. That's true. I deserve the best love. I deserve a lavish love. I'm worthy and I'm worth it. I'm healing through that right now. And I want to get to the point where I'm just like, period, poo about that. Like, that's what I want it to be like. That's just what it is. If you want to step to me, you gotta like come with these things because I know that I'm worthy and worth that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you joy?
My family. I particularly my nephews. My nephews and my nieces. I just think that little children, like I use them actually in my manifestation work because I try to think about what the highest love that I can imagine feels like. And their love is just so pure and easy. It's just nothing at all. Like, I bought you a banana. A banana? Oh my God. Like, it's just like you could be walking around with no eyebrows on and they'll just still want to give you a kiss and a hug. It's just so amazing. So they bring me so much joy and they heal me so much. And so, yeah, I do. I definitely use them as a visualization sometimes in my manifestation work when I need to get out of like a low feeling or, like when you're just feeling anxious. Like I think about my babies and just feel like they really are here. I love them so much. Yeah. So that's what brings me joy.
That's beautiful. You know, my niece, she is, I can't believe she's about to be 9 in August. Lord have mercy. Where's time going? But
Mm-hmm.
I've developed this, I'm working on it, but I developed this fear of flying, which I developed it like at 26. Like it's really
Okay.
weird. So it's been like the past
Lord.
6, 7 years. But when turbulence hits, I think about my niece. I researched something online years ago where a pilot was saying replace the turbulence with something beautiful. And so, so I think about my niece and it really will ease me. I just think about her smile, her playing, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I can relate in that way to the power of children just bringing a certain type of joy.
Yeah.
It's just, it's real special. Thank you so much. Where can we find you, follow you, support you?
At EbonyJanice. Janice looks like Janice, but it's not. It's Janice, Janice. So EbonyJanice, pretty much everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, EbonyJanice.com. It's just easy. I try to make it as easy as possible to find me from one place to another place in, all the places that you go. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been profound. I feel like I have so much. This is giving me so many nuggets, and I'm going to be listening to it, taking my own notes. And I got the Artist Way about to be put in my cart too.
Yeah.
And the workbook. I'm like, I'm going to get the workbook too.
Yeah, honey. We're going to heal and manifest and just dream and grow and all the things. I feel that so deeply. And like, in fact, I feel like that's like when I think about feminism, womanism, black feminism and womanism, this isn't an actual wave, but I feel like this is the fourth wave of, feminism, womanism. It's like what would it look like if our social justice work totally shifted from thinking about anybody else but ourselves? Yeah, just like, we quote Audre Lorde, self-care isn't self-indulgence, it's an act of political warfare. Like, what if so we quote that, but that wasn't the fullness of her work. She still was having to deal with misogyny and racism and, homophobia on a regular basis. What would Audre Lorde's work have been? Toni Morrison is the perfect example of that. Like, this was really like, I wasn't talking to you anyway, so I didn't really care. It's like her skin just shined forever. Her locks were, just amazing. She was just like, I wasn't talking to you. I was always talking to the Black girls. And if you got something else from it, that's cute. I'm glad you came, but that's not who I was talking to. So yeah, I'm very interested in like what it would look like if all the Black girls and Black women just decided that we were just going to focus on keeping our situations moisturized and minding our business, and everybody else would just have to figure it out along the way. Meanwhile, we're over here, our edges is thick, our, skin is just even toned, and our nails growing, we're getting all the vitamins we need. Yeah, like, I feel like there is a revolution in that, and I'm invested in that. So yeah, I appreciate you creating space for us to talk about it more, for sure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, before you go, this has been another episode of Inside Out Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, or follow on Spotify. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Yhá Productions, for more digital and visual content coming your way soon. Follow Inside Out Podcast on Instagram, and follow me, Ms. Right on Time, on the gram and Twitter. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm your host, Yhá Mourhia Wright. See it, say it, spell it, and don't wear it out.